The stars were calm above Earth, and for the first time in years, peace truly seemed possible. The Earth-Union alliance, born from conflict and struggle, had finally found its place among the stars. Signing treaties and exchanging knowledge with dozens of alien civilizations, people were beginning to believe the wars were over for good. But peace, as always, was fragile. Without warning, every galactic communication network from deep space stations to small civilian receivers was hijacked. The screens blinked, too black, and then a single video began playing across thousands of worlds. It was grainy, unedited, and clearly leaked from a private source. It showed Princess Elarith, heir to the powerful and secretive Thalzari dominion, standing in a shadowy room, cradling a small human child in her arms. She looked directly into the camera and, in perfect English, whispered, "Do you think? I'll take your child." That was all. No explanation. No context. The feed cut out seconds later. Across Earth and alien territories alike, confusion exploded into chaos. Who was the child? Why was a Thalzari royal, someone from a race known for strict bloodline rules and zero tolerance for cross-species unions, holding a human infant? Governments scrambled for answers. Was this a threat? A warning? Something far more personal? On Earth, all eyes turned toward Commander Elias Ward, a decorated diplomat and former military officer who had years ago vanished from public life after brokering the first secret truce with the Thalzari. During that mission, rumors had swirled that Elias had met the princess in private, a meeting both sides denied, but which now seemed impossible to ignore. Recalled from his quiet retirement in the coastal hills of New Zealand, Elias arrived at the Earth-Union Command Center with a calm face and storming thoughts. The image of Elias, with the child, looped endlessly on the monitors around him. Didn't know what disturbed him more, the video itself, or the familiar softness in Alarith's voice. He had heard that tone once before, a long time ago, in a conversation never recorded and never repeated. Panic was rising fast. On Thalzari colony worlds, protests broke out, accusing the princess of betraying their kind. On Earth, news channels debated endlessly whether this was a real child, a fake video, or some kind of psychological warfare. Some said it was an abduction. Others whispered that it was worse, that it was real, and that the child might be a hybrid, something neither species had ever admitted possible. The Earth Council debated shutting down interstellar routes, but it was too late. The Thalzari Dominion had already responded with silence. No public denial, no threats. It was just one single action that changed everything. The Thalzari vessel, elegant and black as the void itself, appeared without warning at the edge of Earth's defense perimeter. Dozens of alarms went off, and every military satellite locked onto it, yet the ship made no aggressive move. It floated calmly, just outside missile range, and broadcast only one message, not to the Council, not to Earth's leaders, but to Elias Ward alone. The message was short, cold, and unmistakably Alarith's voice. "We need to talk, alone." As commanders argued and generals demanded answers, Elias stood silent, watching the screen. The voice stirred old memories, not just of diplomacy and duty, but of moments far more personal, spoken behind guarded doors on a neutral moon where peace had almost died before it began. I had left that place believing the connection they shared had ended with words unspoken. But now, it seemed the past had returned, and this time, it brought a child with it. The halls of Earth-Union Command filled with panic and speculation. But Elias knew one thing clearly. This was no longer about politics or war. This was something deeper, more dangerous. Whatever truth lay behind that message, behind that child, it had the power to shake not just the civilizations, but the fragile balance of peace holding the galaxy together. And if Alarith was truly reaching out after all these years, it meant only one thing. The truth was real, and it had just begun to surface. The neutral orbital station hung between the stars, like a forgotten monument, suspended in the quiet space between Earth and the Thalzari Dominion. Built as a symbol of peace after the last Great War, it had been left mostly unused until now. The arrival of Princess Elarith brought life and tension to its empty halls. She stepped out of her sleek silver vessel with only 2 royal guards, ignoring the traditions that demanded an entourage of warriors and diplomats. Her presence alone was a message. This was not a political visit, it was personal. When Elias Ward entered the private chamber, he saw her standing by the observation window, still and composed, her long robes moving like liquid starlight. The years had changed her little. Her golden eyes held the same intensity, but now they carried a deeper weight, something unspoken. Elias greeted her carefully, unsure of what to expect, but Alarith spoke first, and her words struck like lightning. "The child," she said, "was not stolen. He was Hersand, possibly his." Elias froze, not knowing how to respond. He remembered the days they spent during the ceasefire mission, the long hours of discussion, the silent understanding they had shared, but there had been no romance, no physical closeness. It had been professional. Or so he thought. Elirith explained the truth in her calm, steady voice. The Thalzari were unlike humans. For them, reproduction was not based on physical contact. It happened through something they called emotional resonance, rare merging of life energy triggered by trust, connection, and mutual vulnerability. During their time on the neutral moon, something had happened between them, not with touch, but with feeling. And from that rare bond, a child had been created. A child who was not fully human and not fully Thalsaria, but something entirely new. Elias struggled to accept what he was hearing, yet deep inside, something made sense. He had always felt that those days had meant more than politics, but he had buried those feelings for the sake of peace. Now they had taken form in the shape of a child neither side knew how to understand, Alarith continued, revealing even more. The video that had caused the galaxy to panic had not been leaked by accident. She had released it herself. She knew the truth could no longer be hidden, and she wanted to force both species to see what they had created together. She believed the child represented a future where the 2 worlds might learn to trust, even love, beyond species and history. But that future was fragile. Powerful factions on both sides feared the child. To them, he was a threat to culture, tradition, and control. Some believed his existence broke laws written in the stars. Others feared he might become a weapon or a symbol too dangerous to live. Elireth had smuggled the child away from Thalzari space, believing she could protect him better in neutral ground, but during the journey to the station, something went wrong. The guards reported nothing unusual, no breach, no violence. When they checked the child's chamber before docking, it was empty. The child had vanished, and no one knew how. Elias immediately demanded a full scan of the station and nearby sectors. Eliath looked shaken for the first time. She confessed that there had been threats, whispers from hidden enemies on both sides, and now she feared one of them had acted. What worried her most was that neither the Earth Council nor the Thalzari Royal Court claimed responsibility. Whoever had taken the child had done so without leaving a trace and without making demands. Elias knew what this meant. Someone was playing a longer game, and they were keeping the child hidden for a reason. Suspicion spread quickly, but nothing made sense. There had been no ship near the station, no signal of escape, no ransom. It was as if the child had simply disappeared into space. And if that was true, then the enemy they feared was not just bold, was already among them. As the silence deepened and the search began, Elireth turned back to the window, her voice quiet but firm. "We were never meant to remain separate, Elias," she said. "But maybe this child is not ours to protect alone anymore. Maybe he is meant to protect us all." Elias didn't answer. His mind raced with thoughts of betrayal, hope, and the strange, beautiful mystery of a child who had changed everything without ever speaking a word. Somewhere out there, his son, or something close to it, was alone, and time was already running out. Whatever this child was, and whoever had taken him, one truth had become clear: the future was no longer written by kings, councils, or warships. It now rested in the hands of a child no one had expected, and everyone feared. And so, the search began, not just for the missing child, but for the answer to a question neither Elarith nor Elias had dared ask before. What if everything they believed about their worlds was wrong? The abandoned moon colony of Seraph 9 floated in silence, a forgotten place once meant for research and now left to decay, but it was here that the search for the missing child led. Elias Ward and Princess Elarith. Tension was rising across the galaxy. The Galactic Council grew restless, with accusations flying between humans and Thalzari, and war whispers creeping through back channels. No one trusted the other side anymore. Some believed the child never existed. Others believed he was a weapon. Only Elias and Elarith knew the truth, and they knew they were running out of time. Working together again was not easy. Once, they had been allies. Now, they were something far more complicated parents. As they traced signal fragments and decoded intercepted transmissions, old emotions began to surface. Their connection was undeniable, but their paths had never been the same. Elarith, raised in a palace of glass and silence, had once rebelled against an arranged marriage to a warlord's son. She had chosen diplomacy, chosen peace, and in doing so, chosen Ilias. Yet she had carried the burden of that choice alone. Elias, once a proud Earth commander, had lived for duty, but carried guilt for the violent beginnings of Earth spread into the stars. He had seen colonies taken, cultures ignored, and treaties broken. He had always tried to be better, but he feared he hadn't done enough. The trail led them to whispers of a rogue group, a dangerous coalition of extremist humans and Thalzari working together not for peace, but for purity. These extremists believed that hybrid life was unnatural, a threat to the laws of both science and spirit. To them, the child represented everything wrong with compromise, with change. Elias and Elarith followed broken paths through derelict outposts, empty starships, and ghostly ruins, always one step behind. Along the way, they met a brilliant geneticist, Dr. Hallam Reyes, who had once worked with Thalzari biology during the early peace talks. When shown fragments of the child's genetic scans secretly preserved by Elarith, Dr. Reyes was stunned. The DNA held a never-seen-before pattern, not just a mix but a balance. It was a stabilizing thread between human and Thalzari traits, something that could, if understood, lead to shared biology, even shared healing. The child was not a mistake, he was a bridge. But time was running short. The extremists had grown bold. A hidden transmission was received, cut through a hijacked channel. The message was simple, brutal, and terrifying. Come alone, or the child dies. It was sent using old encryption codes, Thalzari ones, meaning someone close to Elarith's bloodline might be involved. Every step he took now was not just for a child, but for the future of two civilizations. And as Elarith joined him, silent and strong, they both understood something they hadn't said aloud. This was no longer just a rescue mission. It was the fight for the right of their child to exist, to be seen, and to live without fear. And to face that, they would have to go to the one place they had both avoided for years, the shadows of their own pasts. The dying star cast a faint, trembling light across the broken hull of the ancient battleship, a forgotten war machine now serving as a hidden fortress for the extremists. Orbiting too close to the collapsing star, the ship groaned under pressure, metal creaking like it remembered the battles it once fought.
Oh.
Inside, Elarith walked alone through the dark corridors, ignoring the voices in her comlink begging her to wait. She had left Elias behind, along with her guards, knowing that if anyone could confront the man who had taken her child, it had to be her. She moved with purpose, her heart steady but heavy. At the heart of the ship, she came face to face with Lord Varric, her cousin, once a noble and thoughtful scholar, now twisted by his vision of power. He greeted her not with warmth, but with cold certainty, speaking of a future where hybrids would no longer be bridges between worlds, but weapons of control. Varric revealed his plan without shame. He would use the child's blood, unique and powerful, to create a new species, engineered hybrids, loyal to him, emotionless, obedient. In his view, peace had failed. Unity would come only through force. Elarith's face did not change. but her voice cracked when she said he had lost himself. Varric smiled, as if proud. Meanwhile, far from the central chamber, Elias and Dr. Halim Reyes had slipped aboard using a cloaked shuttle, tracing the child's location through faint neural signals. Reyes had discovered something stunning each time the child had cried, or reached out in fear. It left an energy echo, something more than sound. The child was telepathic. Elias, focusing with quiet urgency, followed these mental traces like footsteps in the dark. Deep inside the ship, they found the child. Locked in a chamber surrounded by energy dampeners, meant to suppress his growing abilities. But the moment Elias approached, the boy's eyes lit up, and a faint hum filled the air. A bond snapped into place, not with words, but with emotion. Elias felt it like a memory waking up inside him. He didn't think. He simply reached out, mind to mind, heart to heart, guiding the child gently toward him. The barriers flickered, and the child stepped forward, not scared, but calm. At that same moment, Elarith faced Varric in a final confrontation. She moved quickly, striking with precision, disabling the systems he had used to monitor the child. Varric fought back, but she was faster until a sudden blade caught her side. She fell, bleeding but not defeated. With one last surge of strength, she struck Varric down and he collapsed, unconscious. Elias found her seconds later, the child. Now in his arms, she looked up at him, her face pale but still strong. She had done what she came to do. Elias lifted her gently, and together they fled through the crumbling ship. Alarm screamed. The dying star's pull had grown stronger, and the battleship was beginning to fall toward it. The structure broke apart with every passing second, flames and gravity tearing it down. But just as the last support beam fell, the child, small, glowing faintly, raised his hand. A shield of soft golden light bloomed around them, holding back heat and pressure. They floated through the collapsing ruins, untouched, carried not by engines or force fields, but by something unknown. Elias looked at the child, who said nothing, but whose eyes spoke of strength far beyond understanding. They reached the shuttle, just in time, and as the battleship was pulled into the burning heart of the star, the child looked back only once, silent, peaceful. The ship flew away into safety, but questions remained. How had he done it? What was awakening inside him? More importantly, what did this mean for all of them? One thing was certain, this child was not just a symbol, he was something entirely new, and he had just saved them all. 1 month had passed since the battle near the dying star, but its echoes still rang across the galaxy. At the heart of Earth's capital, within the towering halls of the Earth Union Grand Assembly, the air felt heavier than usual. Delegates from every major system, human and alien alike, gathered beneath the high. The chamber fell silent as Elias Ward stepped forward, not in uniform, not as a commander, but as a father. In his arms he carried the child who had become the center of it all. The boy, now known by name, Kale, watched the room with calm, glowing eyes, unaware of the storm he had lived through. Elias didn't speak like a politician. His voice was steady, but heartfelt. He told the story, every truth they had hidden. For years, he spoke of Alarith, the bond they had formed, the child created not by science, but by shared understanding. He spoke of the extremists, the danger, and the power Kale had shown not to destroy, but to protect. And then he asked a question that made the entire room pause. If this child can exist, what else can we become? He demanded that the laws be rewritten, not just for Kale, but for every future child who might come from shared love across species. He asked for protection, for respect, and for recognition that families could take many shapes. Some whispered, right, but many listened. As Elias stepped down, a new figure took the floor. Elarith, still recovering from her injury, moved slowly but stood tall. Her golden robes were gone. She no longer dressed as a princess, and in front of her own people, she made the most unexpected choice. She renounced her right to the Thalzari, thrown not out of shame, but because she believed her purpose had changed. She would no longer rule through bloodlines and ancient laws. Instead, she chose diplomacy, the bridge between two worlds and above all, She chose to raise Kale not in one culture, but both. She declared herself not a ruler, but a mother and an ambassador of what could be. Her people were stunned but. In the quiet that followed, some Thalzari bowed their heads, not in shame, but in acceptance. Change had come. Not with force, but through truth. Weeks later, beneath the stars, a new structure stood proudly on the edge of Earth's orbit. The Human Thalzari Cultural Exchange Center, built in record time by volunteers from both species. It wasn't just a building, it was a promise. Inside, children of both worlds would learn each other's histories, languages, and dreams. And walking through its shining corridors on the first day were three figures who would become symbols of that promise: Elias, Elarith, and little Kale between them, holding both their hands. Reporters and visitors watched from a distance, but the family paid no attention. They walked slowly, side by side, beneath a large mural that displayed their journey not as heroes, but as people who dared to believe in something more. On the wall ahead, in bold letters, a message glowed softly: "Peace is not given, it's raised." And far away, on distant colonies, aboard quiet ships, in cities built on alien soil, whispers began to spread, not of fear or doubt, but of hope. Whispers that asked a simple question, passed from one voice to another, growing stronger with every world it touched. What if we could be more than just what we were?